Well, the best laid plans. I've been trying to record my video today for my critical thinking class, and weather has intervened. I'm up here on the terrace. Got a great view of Matarow down there in all of its glory, up into the hills there and down into the coast there. I used to live in that tall building there, and also these ones here. That's where I used to film all the old videos. But it is just so windy and so sunny that I think I'm going to have to relocate back down to the living room. I got all my stuff here laid out, my whiteboard, which doesn't want to stay up because the wind is so strong, and got my stuff there as well. But hopefully if I can choose a better time, maybe earlier in the morning when the sun isn't just directly in my face, this will be a cool place to do some classes. Got my notes there and my wet wipes for the board, and yeah, that was the idea, but unfortunately not to be today. So I'm going to head back down and try and do the class from the flat. Stay tuned. Well, that was fun. I carried all my things up to the terrace and I just carried them all back down again. And I'm kind of sweaty now, but here we are. This is not going to be the permanent place for the classes, because I do over here have a study which needs to be painted and decorated and furnished. At the moment this is just going to have to do. I know the light isn't perfect, but if you can see my welcome back sign, then we should be okay to do this class at least here. So today we're going to be looking at a critical thinking lesson. This is the second one that I've done. Please go back and check out the first one, which was the French rail strikes. There will be a link at the end of this video. And I'm hoping this will be an interesting topic, and if you can send me your opinions as you did last time, had some great replies last time, thank you. We should be able to study some vocabulary, not so much grammar today, although there is a grammar point to cover, and just have a good conversation about a topical issue. So today there are going to be two texts that I'm going to put in the description box, the links. And I would like you to read the two texts, okay? Those are going to be important for us to be able to understand what we're talking about here, and to be able to make a contribution to the discussion later on. It would be good if you had all that information with you. So have a look at those first, and we're going to look at them again together, but just so you know where we are. And yeah, then just check back in a second and we will begin. Alright, so let's get started. Today's topic is going to be the American and Canadian prison strikes that have been happening over the last couple of months. So if you remember back to the first critical thinking video, we looked at the word strike, which is a noun and a verb, and this is when people refuse to work because they are unhappy with conditions that they are facing in the working environment. I'm going to refer you now to the first text that I put in the description, which is for, an essay by Calvin Schermerhorn. I'm going to read a little bit of his essay in order to give you an introduction to this topic. So, as an overview, this is from Calvin Schermerhorn. Prisoners in 17 states and several Canadian provinces are on strike in protest of prison labour conditions. Their demonstrations are compelling Americans to understand that some everyday foods are produced behind bars in prison for cents an hour, in a system many call modern slavery. Prisoners in the US harvest and process eggs, orange juice, ground beef and fish. They also staff call centers, fight wildfires and make sugar. Actually, I think in the California fires this year, a lot of prisoners were out with the local firefighters in the forests and etc. fighting these fires. So they did a lot of different services. For this work, they receive on average 86 cents a day, according to the Prison Policy Initiative, an advocacy group. So 86 cents per day. This is obviously a very low amount, and we'll come back to that in a moment. If you are familiar with American history, American culture, you know that slavery nowadays is illegal. A big part of the American history was based on slavery, but for the last at least a couple of hundred years, it's been illegal and it's been abolished in all of the states. However, we can see now that these prisoners are comparing their conditions to that of slaves. Let's have a look a little bit further in the essay. The guy states, even today, most United states use their prison populations to furnish low-priced food and other supplies for public facilities, including schools. 37 states contract with companies like Chevron, Compaq, Boeing, and Victoria's Secret. Okay, so maybe you've heard of some of those companies, and I suppose the prisoners are processing products for those companies. A little bit later, it goes on to say some of these private companies are legally obligated to pay a prevailing wage. A prevailing wage is a fair price and fair conditions. But quite often, workers take home $1.96 an hour to make computer circuit boards, and after 80% of their pay is deducted to pay for their own incarceration. So basically, a lot of the time, they do receive a respectable pay from these jobs, and then the money is taken to pay for their time in prison. And I'll leave it there for that essay, but please have a look at the rest of it. It's quite an interesting read. So we have the broad outline of what we're talking about here, that the American prisoners are not happy with the conditions they are working in, and they want to have fair pay and better working conditions. So there's a couple of conflicts here, as with any critical thinking lesson. There are going to be two sides that we need to look at. The first one here, rehabilitation versus punishment. The second one, fair pay versus slavery. So we've got some contrasts here. We'll be looking at those in detail a little bit later. But first, rehabilitation. Depending on your opinion, and I'd like you to tell me, at least contribute to the discussion, prison is used to rehabilitate prisoners. The idea, in some people's eyes, not everybody, is that the prison should educate prisoners, should provide them with money, with a job, with education, so that they can go back into society later on and be productive. There's obviously a balance here, because prison is supposed to be a punishment. You go to prison because you have done something bad. And a lot of people would say, no, they should not have good money, they should not have good conditions, because they are being punished. This is the purpose of prison. So I'd like you to think about that and see where you sit, where you are on this debate. Are you more this side or this side? Equally, we've got connected here fair pay and slavery. Slavery is illegal. Fair pay is pretty much a standard thing in all of the United States. However, the US Constitution, most of the rights in that Constitution apply only to free men. If you are in prison, a lot of the constitutional rights that you have, including voting, I think in some cases, are taken away from you. Even if you are an ex-prisoner, in some states you are not allowed to vote. Okay, so we're going to think a little bit about that. Next thing we're going to do in this class is have a look at some vocabulary. All right, but if you're doing this in a class, or if you're doing this in a group, I'd like you just to pause the video now, have a look at these four options that I've put on the board, and have a little discussion, about 5 minutes, to see which side are you on. Are you in the middle? Are you more this side? Are you more this side? Tell me a little bit about what you think, and we'll come back and look at some vocabulary. Okay, we're back, and we've got some crimes here that we're going to look at. Okay, they're very similar crimes, but I've put them into 3 columns: the person who does the crime, the verb for this action, and the noun. In your groups, or even if you're working alone, it doesn't matter, I'd like you to try and make a list of different crimes that you can think of. Make some notes, and again, you can send them in the comments section, and we can comment as to what the different transformations of these words could be. It's always good to know the person who does the crime, the verb, and the noun. Okay, so try to do a little research as well. I've got some examples here. I've looked at burglar, which is the first word. The verb is to burgle, and the noun is burglary. Now, this is a person who specializes in breaking into houses and stealing things. Maybe the owners of the house are not there, maybe the owners of the house are sleeping, but this person specializes in entering a house and stealing things. This is to burgle. The next one I've got is a mugger. Now, a mugger is somebody who will approach you in the street with maybe a weapon or maybe just with their own physical force and demand that you give them all your money or all your telephones or any technology that you may have, anything of value. And the verb for this is to mug someone. And the noun for it is a mugging. There was a mugging last night in Barcelona, for example. Okay, so a mugger is another type of person, and to mug. A robber, you've probably heard this one before. A robber is a little bit general. Okay, sometimes it's used for somebody who steals in general, but a robber for me is somebody who enters an establishment, for example, a bank or a museum, somewhere like this, and then they take things from that place. Okay, you wouldn't really associate robbery so much with houses and things. It's going to be an institution like a bank or a museum. So you've got the robber, you've got the verb to rob, and it's called a robbery. Okay, you may have heard of bank robberies, train robberies, this type of thing. And the last one, probably the most typical one, and this can probably apply to all of them. Okay, this is the most general word. And a person who steals in general is called a thief. Okay, and a thief will steal things. So this is a bit irregular. The verb is not to thief, although some people do say this, but the correct verb is to steal. Okay, and the noun for this crime is theft. Okay, so you have a thief who steals and commits theft. Now, another question people have, and a typical error that I see sometimes, is steal and rob. A lot of people mix steal and rob. There is a difference. You steal something, okay? You steal a pen, you steal a bag, you steal a laptop, you steal an object. You rob a person. So you rob your neighbor, you rob the bank, it's a person or a place. You rob the bank, you rob a train, you rob your friend if you are a bad friend, okay? So you do not rob a bike, you steal a bike. You don't steal a person, that would be ridiculous, you'd be carrying the person over your shoulder. So you steal items, you rob places and people. Okay, so that's it for the vocabulary though. Please have a look, see if you can find any more crimes. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. Let's see if we can find all the different transformations for those crimes. Just a quick grammar point, guys, nothing too strenuous. But to talk about these crimes and to talk about the legal process, quite often we use passive structures, okay? I'm not going to go into detail of how to make passive structures today, but you might just want to check the actual grammar rules for that, or I might do another video another day about passive. But I'm going to give you some of the most typical examples of using passive, talking about legal procedures. All right. So we're going to go through a typical legal case, and first I will need a criminal to be my example. And the first thing that normally happens is that the criminal is arrested. Okay, that is when the police catch the criminal, put them in handcuffs, and take them to the jail. Okay, so we arrest the criminal. The criminal is arrested. The criminal is then accused of something. So accused of, for example, from the last part of the class, burglary. To be accused of burglary. This does not mean that the person is guilty yet, but this is the accusation that the plaintiff makes against them. They're saying, you have robbed this house. So the accusation is burglary. Then, after a trial, they can be found guilty, bye-bye, or not guilty. So they can walk away and be free, okay? So you can be found guilty or not guilty. You are then, if you are guilty, you are sentenced to X amount of time. So I could say, okay, you have been found guilty, you are sentenced to 50 years in prison. I'm sorry, you gotta go. So he goes to prison, he's sentenced to 50 years in prison, and he is convicted of his crime. So in this case, he is convicted of burglary. All right, so you have accused, the sentence here, guilty or not guilty, sentenced to a specific time period, followed by convicted. And you are convicted of this crime, and that's it. You go to prison. So you're going to have a quick look at passive. I'm not going to do it today, but maybe in the future I will. Any questions about that though, any kind of confusion, send me a quick message in the comments or to my email, and we'll try to sort it out. Okay, quick speaking activity for you if you're in a group. If you're studying alone, feel free to email me and we can always get the conversation started there. But, question, do you know anyone who has been burgled? What happened to the criminal? So if you're in a group, you can start exchanging these questions, substitute burgled for some of the other crimes that we've discussed and the other crimes that you have discovered, and exchange those questions and answers with a partner. Ask for any help of your teacher or contact me directly. Alright, final part. This is where you tell me what you think. And we're going to have a look at the second text that I've given you to look at, which is from the incarceratedworkers.org website. Okay, this is where the prisoners have published a list of their demands that they want to be satisfied before they end this strike. Okay. Really, this is over to you. I'd like you to tell me what you think and where you stand on this argument. Is prison more of rehabilitation? Should there be opportunities in there? Or do you think, well, these people have done bad things, and some of them have done very, very bad things. It should be punishment. You go in there, you should not come out and walk into a job and have money. This is the logic. This is the point of prison. I want to hear from you, okay? I'm just going to look at some of these demands. I'm going to read some of them out and explain them because some of them are a little complicated. Then I'd like you to tell me what you think, okay? So there's 10 demands that we can see here, and I'm just going to choose a few of them. If I look at number 2, it says they want an immediate end to prison slavery. All persons imprisoned in any place of detention under United States jurisdiction or authority must be paid the prevailing wage in their state or territory. So that's basically they want the minimum wage and fair working conditions depending on the state where they are imprisoned. Let's have a look. Number 4, this is important. The Truth in Sentencing Act and the Sentencing Reform Act, I don't know the details of these, but we can imagine, must be rescinded or taken away so that imprisoned humans have a possibility of rehabilitation and parole. No human shall be sentenced to death by incarceration or serve any sentence without the possibility of parole. Parole is when you pay money and you can leave the prison under very controlled conditions. So they do not want people to spend all of their life in prison. And yeah, everyone should have the possibility of paying some money and leaving the prison in a controlled condition. This would be a very, very dangerous thing perhaps, or maybe, if you believe in rehabilitation, this is the way to do it. Tell me what you think. 5, an immediate end to the racial overcharging, over-sentencing and parole denials of black and brown humans. Black humans shall no longer be denied parole because the victim of the crime was white, which is a particular problem in the southern states. I don't really want to go into like a racial debate in this video, but it's kind of unavoidable in a way because in the southern states they do have a huge problem with race relations. So I'm not going to go vastly into detail on this one, but tell me what you think again, if you think that because of race that the prison system is kind of unequal. An immediate end to racist gang enhancement laws targeting black and brown humans. Now again, without going into too much detail, gang enhancement. Gangs are basically groups of people who fight each other in the street for territory or for drugs or for whatever. And quite often they have tattoos to identify themselves in one gang. The problem with that, when they go to prison, if they are identified in that gang, sometimes there is more time added to their sentence. So you could go to prison for 5 years, but if they see that you have a tattoo for this gang, they will give you 7 years because they do not like this gang. Tell me what you think of that. Number 7. No imprisoned human shall be denied access to rehabilitation programs at their place of detention because of their label as a violent offender. Basically, if you go to prison for a violent crime, then all of those rehabilitation programs, studies, courses, and that sort of thing, you cannot go to them because they think that you would be a danger to the other prisoners and to the teachers who are running these courses. So they're asking that everyone has access to these rehabilitation services. Number 9 says Pell Grants must be reinstated in all US states and territories. So Pell Grants, similar to what there is in the UK, this is when the government will give you some money to help you study. In the UK you have to return that money, but a grant is is when the government will give you money in order to spend. If you're from a poor family, for example, or your family just don't have that much money, the government will give you money in order to study. And I think prisoners would like to have that opportunity as well. The final one, the voting rights of all confined citizens serving prison sentences, etc., must be counted. Representation is demanded, all voices count. As we said before, prisoners in a lot of states cannot vote. Ex-prisoners who have finished their sentence, a lot of them cannot vote. Do you agree or do you disagree with this? Okay. So, having a look at the grammar, we've looked at passive. We've looked at a lot of vocabulary for different crimes, well, some, and hopefully you can contribute some to me as well. And we've had a look at 2 texts. And I'd like to go back and see if we can look at those questions that we looked at the start of the lesson, okay? If you're in a group, again, you can do this with your group, individually, one-on-one with your teacher, and please do send a comment, a like, and a subscription to the channel so I can respond to you and we can hopefully have a conversation all together. I've really enjoyed posting these videos on the Facebook groups and some comments from YouTube. I've got people from all over the world commenting, so if we can keep that going, that would be fantastic. So really that's it for this class. Please get in touch, please let me know what you think, and if there are any other topics for critical thinking classes that you'd like me to cover, again, please just send me a comment or an email and I'll see if I can get around to doing it. Hopefully now that I'm in my new place, there will not be such a long wait until the next one. It is very nice to be back doing this. Remember as well, guys, I always activate subtitles for these videos, so I try to get them done quite quickly and maybe not everyone can understand. If that's a problem, turn on the subtitles. Sometimes they're a little creative and they make some mistakes, but in general they will allow you to follow along with what I'm saying. Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and I'll see you again soon. Thanks again.